You go to the doctor, and for once, you actually did everything right. You checked that the doctor was in network. You handed over your insurance card, you paid the copay. You asked the front desk, "This is covered, right?" And they said the most financially dangerous sentence in American healthcare. Your insurance should take care of it. So you leave thinking, okay, annoying appointment, but handled. Then 6 weeks later, you open your mailbox and see an envelope with the little insurance logo on it. Not a bill, not exactly. An explanation of benefits, which is already a suspicious name, because any document that needs to tell you it is explaining something is usually about to explain absolutely nothing. You open it. Your doctor billed $3,200. Your insurance discount brought it down to $1,740. Your plan paid $0. Patient responsibility, $1,740. Reason code, service not medically necessary. And for a second you just stare at it, because your doctor said it was medically necessary. You were literally sitting in the exam room when the doctor said, "You need this." But apparently somewhere in a building you've never seen, a person you've never met, or maybe a software system that spent less time on your claim than you spend deciding whether to reheat coffee, decided no. And here's the trap. The denial is not always the real weapon. The delay is. Because now the game begins. Call the doctor, call the insurer, wait on hold, get transferred, resubmit paperwork, ask for the right code. Get told the provider needs to appeal. The provider says you need to appeal. The insurance company says they never received the appeal. The doctor says they sent it twice. And after 3 months of this, you start thinking something insurance companies understand very well. Maybe I should just pay it. That is the machine. Not the denial itself. The delay. The confusion. The exhaustion. The little administrative maze designed to make a perfectly reasonable person give up. And here's the uncomfortable part. This is not some rare glitch. KFF found that insurers selling plans on healthcare.gov denied 19% of in-network claims in 2024 and 37% of out-of-network claims. That is about 1 in 5 in-network claims. And consumers appealed fewer than 1% of denied in-network claims. Fewer than 1%. That means the denial does not have to be correct. It just has to be annoying enough that almost nobody challenges it. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about the systems that make ordinary Americans feel financially irresponsible for problems they did not create. If you're someone who has ever paid for health insurance every single month, then still got a bill you thought insurance was supposed to cover, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today we're talking about the insurance denial machine, not just why claims get denied, why they get delayed, why the appeal process feels impossible, why missing documentation somehow becomes your problem, and why, in many cases, the most profitable outcome for an insurance company is not necessarily proving you're wrong. It's making you too tired to keep going. Here's the thing. Most people misunderstand what health insurance is. They think insurance is a promise. You pay premiums every month, and when something bad happens, insurance pays. That's the emotional contract. But the actual contract is much colder. Insurance is not a promise that your care will be paid for. Insurance is a set of rules about when the company might pay, how much it might pay, which codes have to match, which doctor has to submit which document, which department has to approve it, and how long you have to fight if they say no. You are not buying simplicity. You are buying access to a rulebook you may not see until something goes wrong. And once you understand that, the whole system starts looking different, because a denial is not always the final answer. Sometimes it's the opening move. A claim gets denied. Most people don't appeal. Some people call once. Fewer people call twice. Almost nobody writes a formal appeal with records, codes, deadlines, plan language, and a request for external review. And the insurance company knows this. This is where it gets really interesting. In Medicare Advantage, KFF found that insurers made 52.8 million prior authorization determinations in 2024. About 4.1 million were denied in full or in part. Only 11.5% of denied prior authorization requests were appealed. But when people did appeal, 80.7% of those appeals were partially or fully overturned. Let me say that differently. Most denied requests were never appealed. But when they were appealed, more than 8 out of 10 were overturned. That should make you sit up, because that means a denial can look official, intimidating, and final, while still being wrong enough to get reversed when challenged. A denial letter feels like a verdict, but sometimes it's just the first no in a process most people never finish. And this is the psychological trick. A denial letter feels final because it looks final. It has a logo, it has formal language, it has codes, it has a sentence that sounds like it was written by a committee of staplers. So your brain says, well, I guess they know. But the first no is not always the truth. Sometimes the first no is just the point where the company hopes you stop reading. Now you might be thinking, Nick, come on, insurance companies can't just deny everything. There are rules. Yes, there are rules. There are also mazes, and a maze can have perfectly legal walls. Let's walk through a simple example. You need an MRI. Your doctor orders it. The imaging center says they'll submit it to insurance. The MRI costs $2,400. You assume the doctor knows what they're doing. The doctor assumes the billing department knows what it's doing. The billing department assumes the insurer will say something if there's a problem. The insurer says prior authorization was required. Nobody told you. Or maybe someone did tell someone, but not you. The claim gets denied. Now you get a bill for $2,400. You call the insurer. They say the provider should have gotten authorization. You call the provider. They say insurance should have approved it because the doctor ordered it. You call insurance again. They say your provider can submit a retroactive authorization request. You call the provider again. They say retro authorizations are rarely approved. You call insurance again. New representative. New explanation. New call reference number. Same panic. Notice what happened. Your medical problem became a paperwork problem, and somehow the paperwork problem became your job. You are no longer solving a medical issue. You are project managing a dispute between two institutions that both have more experience than you. That's not customer service. That's administrative combat. Here's what most people don't realize. The denial machine doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to be exhausting. Let's do the math. Imagine an insurer denies 100,000 claims averaging $500 each. That's $50 million in disputed claims. Now, not every denial is wrong. Some claims really are duplicates. Some are coding errors. Some are out of network. Some are not covered by the plan. But suppose even 10% of those denials would be overturned if challenged. That's $5 million. If almost nobody appeals, the company keeps most of that money. Not because the patient was wrong, because the patient ran out of time, energy, or information. In a system where fewer than 1% of people appeal, the first no becomes incredibly valuable. That number is not just about consumer behavior. It is a business environment. If I know that almost nobody will formally challenge my decision, then the initial decision becomes powerful. Even if it is sloppy, even if it is automated, even if it is based on missing paperwork, even if it would lose on appeal. And that brings us to one of the most disturbing examples of the modern denial machine. In 2023, ProPublica reported that Cigna doctors denied more than 300,000 payment requests over 2 months using a system called PXDX, spending an average of 1.2 seconds on each case, according to internal records reviewed by reporters. Cigna disputed the reporting and said the review process was mischaracterized, but the story became a major flashpoint in the debate over mass claim denials. 1.2 seconds. That is not enough time to read a medical record. That is barely enough time to realize you clicked the wrong microwave button. If your doctor spent 1.2 seconds with you, you demand a new doctor. But when a claim is denied that fast, many people assume the system knows something they don't. And again, the issue is not only one company. The issue is the logic. If the system can deny claims at scale while requiring patients and doctors to appeal one by one, then the workload is asymmetric. They use a machine. You use your lunch break. They use codes, templates, portals, algorithms, and teams. You use a phone tree. That is not a fair fight. Now let's translate the language of denial letters, because this is where a lot of people get frozen. The biggest trick in this whole system is that the denial often sounds reasonable. It doesn't say, "We don't feel like paying." It says, "Not medically necessary, missing documentation, prior authorization required, experimental or investigational, out-of-network provider, incorrect billing code, coordination of benefits issue, service excluded by plan, maximum benefit reached, claim not filed in time." Each phrase sounds technical. Each phrase sounds official. And when something sounds official, most people assume someone must have carefully reviewed it. But here's the translation. Not medically necessary does not always mean your doctor was wrong. It may mean the insurer's criteria were different from your doctor's judgment. Missing documentation does not always mean the documentation doesn't exist. It may mean it wasn't attached in the exact format the system wanted. Out-of-network provider does not always mean you knowingly chose an out-of-network doctor. It may mean someone involved in your care was out-of-network, even though the facility looked in-network. Prior authorization required does not always mean you did something wrong. It may mean the system expected permission before care happened, even if nobody clearly told you that at the moment you needed care. An incorrect billing code may mean the care itself was covered, but the claim was submitted in a way the system rejected. Sometimes the denial is not really saying no. Sometimes it is saying, "Not like that." And if nobody tells you the difference, you pay. This is why health insurance makes normal adults feel like they're failing an exam for a class they never signed up for. Now let's talk about prior authorization, because this is one of the cleanest examples of delay as a business model. Prior authorization means your doctor believes you need something, but your insurer has to approve it before they'll pay. In theory, this prevents unnecessary care. And look, in theory, that can make sense. Nobody wants a healthcare system where every test, procedure, and treatment gets approved automatically with no review. Costs matter. Fraud exists. Overuse exists. But in practice, prior authorization can become a toll booth placed between the doctor and the patient. Your doctor says, "You need this medication." The insurer says, "Prove it." Your doctor sends documentation. The insurer says, "Use this other medication first." You try the other medication. It doesn't work. Your doctor sends more documentation. The insurer asks for a different form. The form gets faxed. Yes, faxed. Because apparently American healthcare is powered by 1997. Then you wait. And while you wait, the medical problem does not pause politely. Pain continues. Symptoms continue. Anxiety continues. Work gets missed. The condition may get worse. And eventually, some people give up. The American Medical Association survey found that 78% of physicians reported prior authorization often, or sometimes results in patients abandoning a recommended course of treatment. That is the entire business model in one sentence. Delay the care long enough, and some people stop trying to get it. Not always by one villain twirling a mustache. By a process. A process that turns a medical decision into an endurance test. Now let's make this personal. Imagine a woman named Sarah. Sarah is 43. She has chronic migraines. Her doctor prescribes a medication that costs $680 a month without coverage. Insurance denies it. Reason: step therapy required. That means Sarah must try cheaper medications first, even if her doctor already thinks this one is the right option. So she tries the first cheaper medication. It makes her nauseous. She misses 2 days of work. Doctor documents it. Insurance says try another one. She tries the second one. It doesn't work. Another month passes. Her doctor submits the prior authorization again. Insurance says the form is incomplete. The doctor's office says they submitted the right form. Sarah calls the insurance company during her lunch break. She waits 37 minutes. The representative says they need clinical notes. The doctor says the clinical notes were sent. Insurance says they don't see them. Sarah starts crying in her car because she is not just fighting migraines anymore. She is fighting an administrative fog machine. The delay did not need to deny Sarah forever. It just needed to make every next step cost energy. And here's the financial piece. Maybe Sarah eventually gets approved, but during the delay she pays for 2 urgent care visits at $175 each. She misses 3 unpaid workdays worth $240 a day. She pays out of pocket for temporary medication, $90. That's $1,160 in indirect cost before the actual medication is even approved. The denial did not have to become a permanent denial to cost her money. The delay was expensive enough. This is the part people miss. Insurance friction creates financial damage even when the patient eventually wins. A delayed approval is not the same as an approval. If you get the medication after 3 months of pain, that is not a neutral outcome. If you get the surgery after your condition worsens, that is not a neutral outcome. If your bill gets corrected after it hits collections, that is not a neutral outcome. Delay is not just inconvenience. Delay is a cost-shifting mechanism. It shifts time to patients. It shifts paperwork to doctors. It shifts risk to families. It shifts stress into the part of your life no spreadsheet tracks. And the machine depends on you thinking, "I don't have the energy for this." Now here's the other big psychological lever. People trust insurance paperwork too much. A denial letter arrives, and it feels authoritative. It has a logo. It has codes. It has formal language. So your brain says, well, I guess they know. But remember the Medicare Advantage appeal data. In 2024, more than 80% of appealed prior authorization denials were overturned. That does not mean every denial is wrong, but it does mean the first no is not always the truth. The first no is not always the truth. Sometimes it is just the point where the company hopes you stop reading. And that mindset shift matters. Because if you treat a denial as a final judgment, you stop. If you treat it as a request for evidence, you respond. And I know that sounds annoying. It is annoying. That is the point. The system places the burden on the person least equipped to carry it. KFF's consumer survey found that 58% of insured adults reported at least one problem using their health insurance in the past year. The same survey found that 60% of insured adults did not know they have legal appeal rights, and 76% did not know which government agency to call for help with their insurance. Think about that. Most people have problems. Most people don't know their rights. That is a perfect environment for a denial machine. Now you might be thinking, but Nick, if the appeal works so often, why don't doctors just appeal everything? Because doctors are drowning too. Every prior authorization request takes staff time. Every appeal takes staff time. Every peer-to-peer call takes physician time. Every resubmission takes billing time. And the insurer knows that providers also have limited capacity. So the denial machine doesn't just test patients, it tests the whole medical office. A small practice might have one person handling billing. A hospital might have an entire revenue cycle team. But either way, every denied claim creates work. And when enough work piles up, some claims are written off, some patients get billed, and some care gets delayed. The insurer says no once. Then everyone else has to work to turn it into a yes. That is why denial is not just a medical issue. It is an administrative labor strategy. Let me give you another example. A man named Marcus gets knee surgery. He checked the hospital. In network, he checked the surgeon. In network, he paid his deductible. He thought he did everything right. Then he gets a bill for $2,300 from an anesthesiology group he has never heard of. He calls the hospital. They say, that's a separate provider. He calls insurance. They say, whoa, that provider was out of network. Marcus says, I was unconscious. I did not go shopping for anesthesiologists. The representative says, I understand your frustration, which, by the way, is customer service language for this conversation is going nowhere. Now Marcus has to figure out whether the No Surprises Act applies, whether the claim was processed correctly, whether the provider can balance bill him, whether the bill should be disputed, whether he should pay it to avoid collections. And this is another layer of the machine, fragmentation. The hospital is one entity. The doctor is another. The lab is another. The anesthesiologist is another. The insurance plan is another. The billing company is another. And you, the patient, are somehow expected to coordinate them like you're producing a Broadway musical called Please Don't Ruin My Credit. The more fragmented the system is, the easier it is for every person on the phone to say, that's not our department. The No Surprises Act protects many people with group or individual health plans from surprise bills for emergency services, certain non-emergency services from out-of-network providers at in-network facilities, and out-of-network air ambulance services. And that's the problem. A right you don't know how to use is not much protection. Here's what most people don't realize. Confusion is not neutral. Confusion changes behavior. When people are confused, they delay action. When they delay action, deadlines pass. When deadlines pass, appeal rights shrink. When appeal rights shrink, the denial becomes harder to fight. That is why speed matters. Not because you need to panic, because the system has clocks. Appeal deadlines, filing deadlines, documentation deadlines, prior authorization windows, external review deadlines, and the denial letter may mention those deadlines in language so dry it could dehydrate a cactus. So let's talk about what you actually do. Not theory, not rage, a practical defense system. Because when the denial machine is built to create delay, your job is to create momentum. First, do not confuse an explanation of benefits with a bill. An EOB is the insurance company's explanation of how it processed the claim. It may show patient responsibility, but it is not necessarily a final bill. Before you pay, wait for the provider's bill and compare it to the EOB. If they don't match, call. If the claim was denied, ask why. And do not just ask, why was this denied? Ask for the specific denial code, the reason code, the claim number, the date of service, and what exact document or action is needed to reconsider it. Specific questions get better answers than emotional ones, and I know that's unfair. You should be allowed to be emotional when someone sends you a $3,000 bill. But when dealing with a claim system, precision is armor. In this system, I'm upset gets sympathy. What is the denial code and appeal deadline gets movement. Second, ask whether the issue is a denial or a coding problem. This is huge. Sometimes the insurer is not saying the care is never covered. They're saying the claim, as submitted, does not match the rules. Wrong diagnosis code, wrong procedure code, missing modifier, wrong place of service, duplicate claim, no referral on file, prior authorization missing. If it's a coding problem, the provider may need to submit a corrected claim. That is different from you filing an appeal. So ask the insurance company, is this denied because the service is not covered or because the claim needs to be corrected and resubmitted? That one question can save you months. Third, get the denial letter, not just a vague portal message, not just a phone explanation. The denial letter. It should explain the reason for denial, the plan rule they relied on, how to appeal, and the deadline. If you have employer-sponsored insurance, ask for the plan document or summary plan description. If you have marketplace coverage, Medicare Advantage, Medicaid managed care, or another type of coverage, Ask for the evidence of coverage or member handbook. The names vary. The principle does not. You want the rule book, because if the insurer says no, you need to know which rule they claim supports the no. You cannot fight the rule if you never ask to see the rule book. Fourth, create a call log. Date, time, phone number, representative name or ID, call reference number, what they said, tasks, what they promised, what the next step is. This sounds boring because it is boring, but boring wins disputes. If a claim takes 6 calls and every call starts from 0, you lose momentum. A call log lets you say, on March 4th, Representative 2187 told me the provider needed to submit clinical notes. The provider submitted them on March 6th. On March 12th, Representative 4412 confirmed receipt. That sentence is not magic, but it changes the tone. You are no longer a confused consumer. You are a documented consumer. And documented consumers are harder to brush off. The machine loves phone calls because phone calls disappear. You should love records because records stay. Fifth, involve the provider, but don't assume the provider will do everything. Your doctor's office can often submit medical records, write a letter of medical necessity, correct billing codes, or request a peer-to-peer review. But you need to ask, and ask specifically, can the doctor submit a letter of medical necessity? Can the billing office submit a corrected claim? Can you confirm the authorization number? Can you upload the clinical notes again and send me confirmation? Can someone from the office call the insurer with me on the line? You should not have to become the project manager, but sometimes you do. Sixth, appeal in writing. Phone calls are useful. Written appeals create a record. Your appeal does not need to sound like a Supreme Court brief. It needs to be clear. Include your name, member ID, claim number, date of service, provider, amount denied, reason for denial, and what you want. Say something like, I am appealing the denial of this claim because the service was ordered by my physician as medically necessary. Please reconsider the claim based on the attached medical records and letter of medical necessity. If you continue to deny the claim, please provide the specific plan language used to support the denial and instructions for external review. That last sentence matters because it tells the insurer you know there is a next step. For many health insurance denials, healthcare.gov says you must file your internal appeal within 180 days of receiving notice that your claim was denied. And if the insurer still denies the claim, you can file for external review. That deadline matters. An imperfect appeal filed on time is usually more useful than the perfect appeal you never send. Seventh, no external review exists. If your internal appeal is denied, you may have the right to an external review by an independent third party, depending on the type of plan and the issue. So don't stop at the first appeal if the amount is significant and the denial seems wrong. Ask, what is my external review process? What is the deadline? Where do I submit it? Is this eligible for expedited review? If the care is urgent, say the word urgent. If a delay could seriously jeopardize your health, ask about expedited appeal rights. Eighth, complain to the right regulator. This part is confusing because American health insurance is basically a drawer full of tangled headphones. If you have fully insured coverage through an employer, your state insurance department may be relevant. If your employer plan is self-funded, the U.S. Department of Labor's Employee Benefits Security Administration may be relevant. If it's Medicare Advantage, CMS, and Medicare appeal rules matter. If it's Medicaid managed care, state Medicaid rules matter. If it's marketplace coverage, state and federal channels may both matter. I know, it's ridiculous. But the practical takeaway is simple. Ask your insurer, who regulates this plan, then verify. And if you're stuck, your state insurance department is often a good starting point because they can at least tell you whether they have jurisdiction. The regulator question matters because sending the right complaint to the wrong place is another way the system burns your time. Ninth, do not pay a questionable bill just to make the anxiety stop unless you understand the consequences. Sometimes paying can make sense. Sometimes you need to avoid collections. Sometimes a provider offers a discount if you pay quickly. But sometimes paying makes the dispute harder, or it reduces the urgency for anyone to fix it. So before paying a denied claim, ask the provider, will this be paused while the claim is under appeal? Can you place the account on hold? Will you send this to collections while insurance is reconsidering? Can you confirm that in writing? Again, get it in writing. 10th, negotiate the bill separately if the insurance fight fails. If the claim remains denied, you may still be able to negotiate with the provider. Ask for financial assistance. Ask for a self-pay discount. Ask for an itemized bill. Ask whether the provider will accept the insurer's allowed amount. Ask for a payment plan with no interest. A denied insurance claim is not always the end of the money conversation. Sometimes it's the beginning of a different negotiation. Now, I know what some people are thinking. This is insane. Why should I have to do all of this? You shouldn't. That is the whole point. A functioning health insurance system should not require sick people to become part-time claims attorneys. But until the system changes, the person who understands the process has a better chance than the person who only feels the frustration. This is not about blaming people for giving up. It's about understanding that the system profits when giving up becomes the easiest option. If you're sick, exhausted, working 2 jobs, dealing with a family emergency, or simply overwhelmed by a system designed by people who apparently hate clarity, giving up is understandable. The problem is not that people fail to appeal. The problem is that the system depends on that failure. That's the difference. Personal finance advice often says, be disciplined. This is not a discipline problem. This is an exhaustion problem. It is a design problem. It is a power problem. Insurance companies deal with claims every day. You deal with your claim maybe once a year, maybe during one of the worst weeks of your life. That imbalance is the machine. So your goal is not to become paranoid. Your goal is to become procedural. When a denial arrives, don't spiral. Triage. What was denied? Why was it denied? Is it a bill or an EOB? Is it coding, prior authorization, medical necessity, network status, or documentation? What is the deadline? Who needs to act? What is the next written step? That simple checklist turns panic into process, and process is how you fight back. Let's bring it back to the opening example. You got a $1,740 denied claim. Old version of you panics, maybe pays, maybe ignores it, maybe calls once and gives up. New version of you does this. You check whether it's an EOB or bill. You call the insurer and get the denial code and claim number. You ask if the provider can submit a corrected claim. You call the provider billing office and ask them to review the coding. You request the denial letter. You ask your doctor for a letter of medical necessity. You file a written appeal before the deadline. You ask for external review instructions if they uphold the denial. You keep the provider from sending the bill to collections while the claim is under appeal. That does not guarantee you win, but it dramatically changes the game. Because now the denial is no longer a wall. It is a door with paperwork on it. Annoying? Yes. Unfair? Absolutely. But not always final. The denial machine works because it makes people confuse delay with defeat. And that's the message I want you to take from this video. The denial machine works because it makes people confuse delay with defeat. It makes people confuse complexity with authority. It makes people confuse exhaustion with inevitability. But a denial is not always the end. Sometimes it is just the point where the insurance company is hoping you stop. So don't stop too early. Ask for the reason. Ask for the rule. Ask for the records. Ask for the appeal. Ask for the external review. Ask for the regulator. Get names, get dates, get reference numbers, get everything in writing. And if this sounds like too much work, I agree with you. It is too much work. But a few hours of organized pressure can be worth hundreds, thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. If your claim is $1,740 and you spend 4 hours fighting it, that's potentially $435 an hour. Tax-free emotional damage income, not bad. And if the claim is $8,000, $20,000, or $60,000, then this is not paperwork. This is financial survival. Because here's the truth. Insurance companies already have a system. They have codes, they have portals, they have denial letters, they have call scripts, they have departments, they have deadlines, they have software, they have lawyers. You need a system too. Not because you're trying to be difficult, because you're trying not to be quietly bankrupted by a process designed to outlast you. So the next time a claim gets denied, remember, the first no may not be the final no. The delay may be the strategy. The confusion may be the business model. And the money you save may depend on whether you treat that denial letter like the beginning of the fight, not the end of it. If this video helped you understand the insurance denial machine, hit the like button, subscribe for more videos like this, and send this to someone who is currently fighting a medical bill, because they may need this before the deadline runs out. You paid for the coverage. You followed the rules. You deserve more than a denial code and a phone tree. But as always, they didn't deny the claim once. They built a process hoping you'd deny yourself the energy to keep fighting. Terms apply.